Yes, I was the first to be ordained in the Presbyterian Church of East Africa.
It was the beginning of that history, wonderful history in Kenya.
Kumomo de nyamburane ne wa murwo ne watuo muramati wa shana shangai.
One thing I liked with Jane is her courage.
That is something that made us feel welcome, and that made us also close to her.
Suddenly, there were women who were heard saying out loud, "A woman would never baptize my child." I was 25 years old. And when you are 25, the world is very different from the world I'm in today. So some of the things that were happening were just normal for me. I was suddenly aware that I was the first. But ministry to me was not new, because my father had been ordained that years before my ordination. So I grew up in the months, and I knew a lot about ministry, probably mostly from my mother than my father, because my mother was the one who would narrate the journeys of what it meant to be a minister in those days.
One thing I liked with Jane is her courage. She was very courageous. In the middle of many men, she was very courageous, and she was determined, and she knew what she had aiming at.
She had a very calm heart. She was very accommodating. She was down to earth. We didn't take her, she never, behaved as if she's a very big person there, up there. She just mingled with us, and that is something that made us feel welcome, and that made us also close to her. And she was also able to minister to many of us.
In 1982, I was serving the church as a deacon, and I was not as old as I am today. I was 32 years old then, so I was just a young person when Reverend Jane Nyambura Joroge was being ordained. She first was licensed at Isli Community Center. Then in September, she was ordained here as the first lady minister.
She just come from the Muru Theological College, and she fitted very well and very fast. Okay? And the people here loved her. And even the youth, they were happy to see a young lady becoming a church elder amongst them.
My parents, I think that was the most difficult moment for me, to see my father laying his hands on me with other clergy. This was a father who never imagined any of his child becoming clergy. I haven't done enough research, but I'm not sure that there were others before me. being a clergy child. Could have been one or two. But nevertheless, the fact that I was a woman, his daughter, without having ever imagined that he would witness his own child, because if the church had not changed the policy, then it would not have happened in his lifetime. But it did. And I think that to see my father in tears was the greatest moment for me, however difficult that was, because I knew it was not out of sorrow, but out of joy that he was in tears. My daughter was baptized the same day, and she cried and cried. So there were plenty of tears to go around. Mm-hmm. But of course, for her, it was the confusion of the day. She was only 8 months old.
I'm telling you, we were happy, we rejoiced. We wanted everybody to know that we have a church minister who is like us, who is a lady, who is a woman. And we felt, yes, this is the time that we are going to reach out to many people who do not know Christ, especially in our homes. And we were very, very happy to be identified with her, especially myself, sharing the name. She is Jane, I am Jane. I felt, wow, it's like me. And we were very, very happy to have her with us. And we enjoyed. We followed her everywhere. Whatever she wanted, we were ready to help her. And she was also very happy to see women at that particular time embracing her and enjoying her and, you know, working with her and telling her we can help you in anything that you need us to help you, we will. She was so, so happy.
The day was for the ladies, it was very colorful. And many ladies were looking forward to this day.
And even amongst the ladies, they had a choir, a special choir to sing for her.
They formed a choir to sing for her. Even they have the photo of the choir, which was celebrating the ordination.
Kumomo de wene wa mulwa ne watu mulamati mulamati washana shangai naige kora ne vyokoryo. It says from today you've been made an overseer of the children of God, and if they get lost, you are the one to be asked by the Lord. So take up the mantle and serve. It is a song that we usually sing for people when they are taking up the ministry work. And we also mentioned her name. Kumomo de nyaburane ne wa murwo ne watu mulamati mulamati washana shangai naige kola ne vyokoryo todwadwarya malutaga wega wiroyo wa utugati wa kanitha nimegeagira ngumo njega nyomireru witikio-ini.
In fact, she was the first lady minister to be ordained in the whole of the PCEA church. Okay? So it was history. And in fact, it was the moderator of the General Assembly, Reverend Dr. Gato, who came to officiate that function. So it was no joke. People came from the head office and from other regions to come and witness the first ordination of a woman in the PCA church. And in fact, it was after Reverend Jane was ordained that even other churches, like the Anglican Church, later on started ordaining women pastors.
We have to look at the church in its wide context, a very patriarchal institution. Even the theology that is taught is patriarchal. The Bible is heavily patriarchal, so the interpretation of scriptures is heavily patriarchal, and that tells even why the church took so long not only to ordain women clergy, but also to ordain women elders after the first men were ordained in 1920. And I was coming into that church well aware. Of course, today I'm more critically aware of many things. But again, as I said, having grown up in the months, I knew a lot about the patriarchal church. I saw it, I heard it, I experienced it. So I wasn't taking anything for granted.
So our church was ahead of the others, and since then they have ordained many other ladies, and the ladies do well. They do very well. After her, there came many other ladies here in the parish, and they succeeded. So I think the church has done well in advancing the role of women being ministers in the church. And I want to congratulate our Presbyterian church because they were the pioneers in ordaining lady ministers.
For the church, it meant reformation. Our church is a church that reforms every now and then. And this meant that the church is embracing women in the church. Because all the churches, the number of people who are many in any church is women. And therefore having a woman minister, it is like reaching out to them in a way that is bringing them back home. And the church changed a lot during that time. Yes, and she also was very, very good with the young people, young teenagers, you know, young people who could speak fluent English, and people who are able to mingle and talk, you know, because, you know, then there are some, salvation was for the old people. It was not for the young. So a young person seeing a minister who is young and born again and talking about salvation, it brought people back, you know, to the church.
It was the beginning of that history, wonderful history in Kenya.
We were engaged when I told him that I want to go to St. Paul's and that I'm going to pursue theological studies to be ordained. And he never looked back. So I would only say, by God's grace, he accepted what I was saying. Some of my fellow colleagues who we had graduated from Kenya Science Teachers Training College together, and we had been posted as young teachers, science teachers, thought I was crazy for resigning from my job, but he was there and he was supportive all along. He has, most of the times I would say, followed my path rather than the usual way, that it's the woman who follows the man's career. When it came to our going to the US for studies, he was there. There were many issues before I could leave for my PhD studies, but he stood with me, and he has always been there up to this day.
We loved her and her husband, Joroge. And she had one child then, and she was expecting another one when she came over. Okay, they had 2 children thereafter. So they had Jogona and Jerry. Okay? And the people loved them.
Her husband, Mr. Joroge, was always supportive, and he was always by her side. And I think that she made it because of the support of the husband. You know, other Men sometimes tell you, you're always in church, you are always in church. But he was always there with her. And she had a good background. From her father was a pastor, was a minister of the Presbyterian church. And the Reverend we had then, Reverend S.K. Wayaki, was a teacher by profession. So he trained her very well.
This is a Standard newspaper. It was published in January 27th, 1982. It is about her story. It is about Reverend Jane's story. She has written about herself. She has written how she came to be a minister. It is how she, first of all, she started when she was expectant. Then she went to the college, St. Paul's College. They had also to move with her husband. She has written it here that he helped her a lot. They moved to theological college and they were given a house there, and he was very, very helpful. And she also did reach out to the young.
One is that we became very good friends. My wife is a doctor, Grace, and she even used to take care of her parents. She was their doctor. So we used to meet quite often. And even when she was in Geneva, when we were building this big building, the Bahati Faith Project, okay, they talked with my wife Grace, and she informed her that there's an organization called World Alliance of Reformed Churches in Geneva who can assist us with the building, who can participate. And indeed, she sent us the forms, we filled them, and we applied for a grant. And it was through Reverend Dr. Jane Nyambura Njoroge that we were able to get 4.74 million shillings. That was early 90s to build this building. We used to have to make harambes, and they were very successful. But one of the very, very big contributions that we got from that organization through this lady, this minister, okay, we were able to get the 4.74 million Kenya shillings. That was around 1992. It's no joke. That was quite a lot of money. Plus the other harambes that we used to hold every year.
Actually, she has written here that it's difficult to kill old habits. There are those who are used to having men in the pulpit and expect to see a man there when they go to church. So when they used to see ladies, a lady, there, and they wanted to see a man, they would feel, what is this? Actually, we know of when she was giving us Holy Communion, there are some people who would just pass because they don't want to be given by a lady. And she would feel very, she would feel very bad. But she would tell them, time will come because we are here to stay. She was not coming for a short time, she was coming to stay. There are also those ones who wanted the children to be baptized. When they saw that it's Jane who is going to do the baptism, they would retreat back, and say, I'll wait for Reverend Wayaki to come and baptize my child. But there are those who embraced her and felt very, very honored to be their children to be baptized by the first Presbyterian woman minister.
Suddenly, there were women who were heard saying out loud, a woman would never baptize my child. So that was also the other side of the story. And but that has never stopped me from doing what God had called me to do.
Jane is a gift to the church. She was a gift to us then, and even now she is a gift to the church. As the first lady minister, she had a few challenges of the old people, because the old people knew only men as ministers, and they used to call them Bwana. But now here is a lady, a young lady, and they don't know what to call her then. But for us, we were very excited, and we supported her very much. We were very supportive.
I was ordained on the 17th January, and my daughter was born on the 30th of the same month. That means I was heavily pregnant, and that already created some issues by those who wondered whether a pregnant woman would actually be a minister.
After all, the majority of any congregation in any church in Kenya is always women. The church leadership, on the other hand, is male. How do these men handle the women in the congregations? This becomes an important issue. Reverend Njoroge feels, do not have necessarily to be part of the ministry to be in the leadership positions. If a woman does not want to be a pastor, there are numerous jobs for her as a lay person. In the Presbyterian Church, she could be an elder or a deacon. There are also many church committees which make decisions which affect the whole congregation, and more often than not, there are no women on any of these committees. That one caught my mind, because there were not many. Men are the ones who are doing the leadership, and the church is full of women, and women are not in any committee. How can they decide for women? But today, thank God for Reverend Jane Njoroge, because she has done us proud. Now the church is led by many women. They are in all committees. There is nowhere in our church in PCA where we don't have any leadership of a woman.
And I thank God that over the years, despite the fact that the number is not as great as I would have wanted it to be after 40 years, God has continued to call women to ministry. And many have answered the call and have done their best to serve within the context that they are called. My message is that we need to continuously interrogate the scriptures, and particularly the Gospels, so that we can dismantle patriarchy, because patriarchy is a very controlling and dominating structure. Sometimes I don't think men think how much they are affected by that control and domination. But certainly women are more affected by that nature of that structure. And the scriptures, especially the Gospels, the way Jesus has dealt with women in the Gospels is a great message for us women, that we should not look back, we should not be intimidated, we should not accept to be dominated and controlled, because Jesus has not made a mistake.
Jane introduced ladies to be ministers. We are very many ministers, even elders, ladies. Like in our church here, we have very many elders who are ladies, and before there wasn't. So we are very grateful to her to have given us this chance, to have opened up for us to be able to minister and to be able to take the gospel forth. Because indeed, what matters is taking the gospel of Jesus where it is supposed to be. And we want people to know Christ. It doesn't matter whether they are ladies, they are young, even young children. We want them to know Christ, because that is why she was called, and that's why we are also called to take the gospel forth. So I thank God that she is still in the ministry, and we are here also in the ministry, and we are taking the gospel forth, and we want all people to hear the gospel of Jesus and to accept Christ as Lord and Savior of their lives.
She has mentioned in the Standard newspaper that she made it because her husband was very supportive and was always there, and he was not very demanding, and he understood what her job was, and she managed because of the support of her husband. I would ask other her spouses to support their spouses, whether it is a man, whether it is a lady, to support each other, and they will move far, they will go far, and the ministry of Christ will move ahead.
We are now going to celebrate 40 years since the first woman was ordained. And this first woman is the person that we know and is a friend of the family and a friend of this parish, a friend of this church, a daughter of God. We thank God for this opportunity, even to be able to celebrate. And we know when we remain in Christ Jesus, we shall indeed celebrate. Okay? The knowing of Christ, the receiving of salvation in our lives, and this wonderful, we'll never regret. Yes, we are happy.
I would tell them that it is possible and they can make it. I would only tell them to be courageous, determined, and depend on God, because God is the author of all these things, and He calls people with a purpose. So I would tell them to be courageous, to be determined, and to lean on Christ, the solid rock, so that they can be able to move the church ahead.